Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of the Middle West podcast. I'm your host, Thaqib Musa, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Abdus-Sami
Assalamu alaikum.
and my other co-host, Assad Hussain.
Assalamu alaikum.
I kind of muddled myself up there because I always start with Assad. But anyway, today we're having a roundtable
It's okay,
discussion.
I've just been promoted to number 2. That's what it means.
I'm still more important than you. Yeah.
Yeah. You
Wow.
guys can battle it out. But as long as
Let's take it outside, yeah?
Yeah, why are you number one anyways?
I don't know. I
He's
think
the American. He's the
I think
American.
Why can't I start the podcast?
I think it's because until we start on video, because I've got the face for radio, so that's why I. When we start doing video, we'll probably start with you because
Okay, yeah.
you're
Probably
a
best-
bit more dynamic looking.
Assad's basically our Shah Rukh Khan.
Assad's our Shah Rukh Khan. Terrible acting, but good looks. So,
Okay, let's carry on.
but yeah, we're talking today about Ramadan, not about the stuff that we just talked about.
Astaghfirullah.
Astaghfirullah. But yeah, so Ramadan, inshallah, I want to talk not just a general kind of, well, Ramadan really is just fast and pray and
And break your fast.
break your fast. And
And that's the end of the podcast. See you next week.
in 2 weeks, actually.
2
It's
weeks.
a fortnightly,
Yeah.
not a weekly, yeah.
But I think the idea what came about was because we have 3 very different people around this table. We have one person who's come from abroad, so he can talk about Ramadan and his experience of Ramadan back in homeland, wherever homeland is, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's Pakistan. I don't know which one. One day he claims to be an Arab, one day he claims to be Pakistani. And then we have another person over here who is from the countryside.
I'll just point out I'm a little bit offended by that deep comment, but anyway, moving on.
Ramadan from the countryside. And then
I don't know.
Rochdale, which is
Rochdale,
basically
it's not. If
a
you've
little
been to,
village of like 30 people.
No, if you've been to Rochdale, you
I
wouldn't
have
say
been to
that.
Rochdale. You had us round at
yeah,
your
you had
local
us
mosque.
round.
Yeah, so how can you say it's a countryside then?
Because it was a countryside.
It's literally not
There's
the
like
countryside.
there's like 1 or 2 main roads, and that's about it.
There was the pub which got converted into a mosque. Astaghfirullah.
Oh,
Alhamdulillah,
yes,
sorry.
I remember that. This is a very common theme in the UK. Alhamdulillah, is pubs get converted to. I went to one in Sheffield where they didn't even bother renovating. They just put carpets in the main, basically what I think was the dance area.
Still got the beer taps there.
They had something there that was covered, and then where the shelves in the back of the bar were, where I assumed they would have put drinks, they just put Qur'ans there. And I was like, this is I don't know if they're being symbolic or cheap or.
There's another
what's
masjid.
going
It used to be a showroom, and now it's a mosque. And you
Well,
can
a
still
car
s-
showroom.
A car showroom, yeah. And you can still see signs at on the shop front or the mosque front rather. Jaguar, Mercedes, BMW. I'm like, mashallah, have I come to buy a car? Have I come to pray at a mosque?
Well, if you pray for Qadi Girdle. Anyway, that was a terrible joke. I should kill myself. But talking about Ramadan a little bit and the fact that how unique it is in the UK. Actually, it's unique for me. I don't know if it's unique for the rest of you. It doesn't really make sense. But growing up in Saudi, Ramadan was a time where everything stopped. So your working hours were reduced. Most public institutions as well as schools, we got the last 10 days off minimum pretty much. And basically Ramadan was when the whole country shifted to like a nighttime routine. Moving here initially was a big shock because it was like, well, you can't really do your worship if you have to go to work and all that. But then more and more I've been exposed to this idea of actually this is not how the Sahaba approached it. Ramadan was very much a part of their life, just like Jum'ah, the Surah Jum'ah, when it talks about Jum'ah, it says, leave your things and come to Salatul Jum'ah. And there will be some of you who will stay, and the marketplace or the buying and selling will attract them so much. So clearly marketplaces were still open on a Friday, and they actually took time away from the marketplace to come in and do their prayers and go back.
When was Surah Jummah revealed?
It's a Madani surah, but
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly when. But that's something, if you're a listener, you can check it out, and that's your Ramadan project. Do the
That's the
tafsir
homework.
It would make sense if it was your point would make sense if it was a Meccan surah, but
No, so it's a Madini surah. The society's already been established.
so you're saying that's what I'm saying. Like the idea of people closing their shops, etc., would make sense if it was a Meccan surah, because if it was a Meccan surah, it would be revealed in a time where the state was established. You know what I mean? So there would be people who were in the marketplace, and they wouldn't necessarily be Muslims. But in Medina, you would assume that the state would be established, and that would be the rule.
Yeah, but it's not.
It's not. So Saudi
So
might
that's
be doing things wrong.
that's quite interesting.
It is interesting.
Because for me, yeah, growing up, that was the way, kind of we always approached it. Is Ramadan comes, everybody switches to nocturnal. The dentist practices, for example, are closed. They only open up after Tarawih, because who's going to go to the dentist when they're fasting?
Yeah,
which I found so interesting.
It's quite niche, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But Saudi,
compare a dentist to a grocer's.
yeah, but so grocers are open, but even then they'll do reduced hours. Or even if you have like a normal job, and your normal hours are 9 to 5, for Ramadan they'll become like 10 to 3 or 10 to 4. And I thought that was the norm for everywhere. And then I came out, and my mind got exposed. Fresh mind off the boat. Came, I was like, oh wow, these people are working in Ramadan. What the hell's going on?
What about because you only came to the country very recently, about 5 years ago. So I guess that's when Ramadan started happening in summer. So I mean, over here we fast for like sometimes even up to 18 hours. And whereas for you guys, it's all, because you guys are quite close to the place.
If you listen to Sheikh Osama Hassan, he says you should fast from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. all year long. It's great.
That was amazing, wasn't it?
But anyway, if you just ignore this guy's opinion for a second and follow what like 99.9% of scholars say,
what normal people are doing.
Well, every single Tom, Dick, and Harry, every single Khalid,
Walid, and
Bin.
But yeah, so how was that for you in terms of like, did you struggle with the time? Because you guys probably have 12-hour fasts every single day of every single time of every single year of every single century, because you guys are quite close to the equator. So, I mean, probably like an hour difference.
Just kind of put your geography in place. Saudi is not very close to the equator. Like it's closer than here,
exactly,
but it's not on the equator. Like we have significant variation, so it goes from.
It wouldn't really matter because the equator doesn't change the time of day, does it?
No, but the variation changes. So, for example, in places like Malaysia, Singapore, which are proper tropical places, the time pretty much stays the same. It doesn't vary.
When's the last time we had a winter? I think since I was a kid.
Exactly, we were children. I was actually speaking about it with a friend.
So Sheikh Abu Isa I think he put this on his Facebook last year. He said, if you are, a young Muslim contemplating having kids, the one argument for doing it now would be by the time they reach fasting age, it'll be December. In 13, 14 years, it'll be December, which is why their experience of Ramadan will be amazing. I don't know how much merit that holds, but that's an interesting point. Is that I feel like a lot of us, our first memories of fasting were kind of in November-ish, so it was pretty short. Even in Saudi, like there's some variation.
I can't remember my first fast, to be honest with you.
I remember my first fast very well because, like every single kid, I cheated it. In the sense that, I was
exposed.
Every single kid, you cheated. No, I did not cheat.
That's a lie. That's a lie. Because I remember this very distinctly. Because it was because the thing is, the schools would give out guidance to parents to not let the children fast because it's not obligatory upon them, and plus, safety hazard or whatever. Not safety hazard, health hazard.
What do schools know?
Anywho, so my parents wouldn't let me fast during the school days. This is when I was a child, primary school age. And then when it came to the weekends, we used to go to my grand's house, and I was, we were allowed to fast then basically. But
your what's house?
My grand's house.
You say gran?
Nani.
I don't think anyone who says gran.
Nani's house, whatever.
Yeah. Nan, grandma, not gran. No one says gran.
Gran.
Sorry, I guess this is
my grand's house.
You see, this is what's going on when you have someone from the countryside.
No,
I know English.
Wow, okay.
Anywho, so go to my grand's house and my nan's house, just to please you, Assad.
Me nan's house.
Go to my nani ki ghar gaya tha na.
Acha.
And anywho, what happened was, I have two cousins that are the same age as me, and I think all of us three were fasting our first fast together. So it became like a competition, and each of like our mothers would be like trying to say, "Oh, my kid's gonna do it better. My kid's gonna do it better." And then we got my granddad. And then all our three cousins here were quite hungry, so we basically.
So what would you call your granddad if your grandma gran? Would you call it grand?
No, it's grand.
You're still hung up on that.
Yeah, I am. I'm just it's a bit weird.
Let me see the story. So anywho, my granddad bought us some chocolates.
Don't you mean tell the story?
Let me tell.
I'm just saying.
Let me say story. I'm saying story right now.
So my granddad got us some chocolates, but he said, I'm only getting you these chocolates because you're fasting today, so it's like a present for your fast.
Oh, that's a nice grand.
Yeah, as in like so to break our fast with basically. What he didn't know, Allah yarhamu, is that and he might find I don't.
If he listens to this podcast, he'll find out. Obviously, Allah yarhamu. Okay, so.
But
if Jannah's got pocket cast, then. Inshallah.
But basically, what happened was that in the car, as he went off to do some more shopping, us three cousins just dived into the chocolate straight away. And this is like around Dhuhr time. And we go back home, yeah, and we just, we're fasting. And then we just munch through that chocolate in secret, like go behind the closed doors and just eat away. And that was my first fast.
That's proper evil.
Yeah, so apart from Abdus-Sami exposing his own sins, what should we talk about?
You're not supposed to keep that stuff private. Isn't it?
I was a child.
I do know a lot of us used to do this. Like our parents convinced us that the Asr to Maghrib fast is a real thing.
Yeah, half fasts. I did half fasts. Yeah.
So you start off with the half fasts, and then you build up to like the legit level.
The daddy fasts.
I only found out about the half fasts when I got married.
What, did you do it then as well?
So your wife,
a 20-odd-year-old man doing half fasts.
No, so my brother-in-law is a 10-year-old kid, very cute, mashallah, and he was doing a half fast from Dhuhr to
which I feel like now is what's at 1 o'clock to 9, so that's pretty.
Yes, exactly, it's very good. And I'm just thinking in my head, like, what the hell is half fast? Like, who invented this? It's clever, I'm not gonna lie. It's a really nice way to transition your child into
bid'ah. It's bid'ah.
It is a bid'ah.
As in, if you're trying to train your child,
triggered.
If you want to train your child, I mean, there's no intention for reward. It's just that you're trying to adapt the child into getting to the habit of fasting. I think it's clever, but yeah,
you get rewarded for the intentions. You wouldn't get rewarded for the act itself.
Well, thanks for making God's judgment for God. I said I'm sure.
Actually, that was a very good friend of mine, Ibn Taymiyyah, said that. Yeah.
Are you going to go through Ibn Taymiyyah's definition of ibadah? Yeah?
No, on bid'ah. So he says you get rewarded for the intentions. People who are sincere get rewarded for the intentions, but not the act itself. So like the fatwa was given for Mawlid at his time.
I see.
And he was this was his mild refutation. That's very mild for Ibn Taymiyyah.
Yeah, it is.
Although
it's not mild for Ibn Taymiyyah
because he was actually a pretty chill guy.
Yeah, cool guy, man.
Yeah, I remember studying with someone and he was talking about how Ibn Taymiyyah is like the most misunderstood person because
if you read Yasir Qadhi's thesis on Ibn Taymiyyah, you understand that straight away as well. It's like the first chapter onwards.
But more about Ramadan. So the school stuff but how are you guys preparing for it? So for me, one of the biggest things I think Ramadan was great until I started working, because it used to fall almost always in the summer, or you'd have like some exams and then freedom again. You were able to really, I guess, cheat around Ramadan. Like since I've been like 15 or something, I've always had Ramadan in like holidays. So I've always been able to kind of make a good plan, and then you do your normal ibadah really easily.
Yeah.
Whereas I think last year for me was I lived, 25-minute drive away from my nearest mosque. Tarawih didn't start until like 11:30 p.m. or 11 p.m. And I needed to be back at work at 7 a.m. the next day. So it was absolute kind of chaos. I've never had a Ramadan like that where by 8 o'clock I just fell down and I was just like, this isn't happening. I can't be doing this.
I think you're very right in this, because even like a couple of years ago, when I was maybe in college and even first 2 years of uni, it felt
a couple of years ago you were in college.
No.
So you were in college, then you got married, and then
5-6 years ago when I was
started doing your half fast.
5-6 years ago when I was in college, and then when I went to first 2 years of university, Ramadan was in the summer holidays basically, and you were able to kind of plan properly before Ramadan. Even like the Sha'ban fasts, you were able to kind of have some fasts in Sha'ban as well, and genuinely build up to Ramadan, and it was really well. But then last year, and it was the first time Ramadan actually got into my exams, and I found that difficult. And I'm now, and this Ramadan coming up, it'll be the first ever first ever Ramadan that I'll be having while working. So I'm thinking it's just going to be even that bit more harder.
I've got deadlines.
Wait, you're going to be working? I just think that we need to define that. You're going to be queuing up. No.
Is this another JSA joke?
Yes.
See, if this was an Islamic country, you wouldn't get your JSA because it'd be closed.
You'd have to queue up at night to get your JSA.
Would there be a JSA?
I think so. I think so.
In an Islamic country.
You gotta have a JSA.
People like him, yeah.
No, but like the thing about the hadith about begging and stuff.
Well, it's not begging, is it? It's like
just helping you get on your feet.
Yeah.
Although this is the thing about it's not clearly defined. Is a lot of people will turn into talk about the welfare state and say that Islam is all about this, and it's like, okay, that's true, but there are some market elements. It doesn't really fit on the spectrum from, communist to capitalist. Islam or the Islamic derivatized or Islamic principles compliant economic system will have some elements of both. So there is a market element to it. We're not fascists or communist. We're Muslims. It's different.
That was very nice.
The balanced path.
The middle path.
Middle path.
Yeah.
The Middle
jinx.
West. Catch us on
that
iTunes,
was-
YouTube, and Spotify.
was a little bit forced, but alhamdulillah.
Anywho, going back to the conversation on Ramadan. This Ramadan will be the first time I'm working. So
Not working.
I've got deadlines from the 1st till the 29th of May, and I've got 14,000 words to do, and I've only done 10 words.
you see, I think for a student, it's
if
so
you've done
chilled.
10 of 14, that's pretty good, right?
10 words.
Oh,
10,000.
Are you not doing a master's?
Yeah.
So how the hell have you only done 10 words? Is that the title?
Not my name.
your name is 10.
I didn't even finish my name. I just got halfway through my name and it stopped. Save document.
But that's one of the things that you need to prep for, right? Is that how do you... So I think the Mad Mamluks, they did an episode where they got this guy from South Africa, and he talked about personal development, and part of that he talked about Ramadan plans, and how he made a plan a few kind of years ago for one Ramadan. He said, my goal is basically from now till the rest of my life. So it's a habit I'm going to develop in Ramadan and then carry on forever, is not a single day should pass by when I don't read some Qur'an. And I think he put it down as something like 2 pages or something. And then he carried that through Ramadan and kept going, which I think before I used to look at that and go, like, even doing one khatam was like not that hard for me. So I would be able to do like a khatam with tafsir because I had 8-10 hours a day to just chill.
Exactly.
Whereas now I think finding 2-3 hours a day is a challenge, and your energy levels are so low because of work and everything, that even a target like 2 pages of Quran a day is pretty intense.
I mean, exactly. When I was younger, I was able to, for example, a lot of my hifz was done during Ramadan because, like, I just wake up at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, because just stay in the mosque all day pretty much until like Asr. And then go home, help out parents and stuff. Because as a student, it was during the holidays, isn't it? So you had just nothing to do at all. Like you're just free and you can do whatever you want. You can actually focus on Ramadan properly. Whereas this time it's going to be hard. So even last year when I had exams, the way I'd kind of center my time would be I'd try and keep that same routine of devoting most of my time towards Qur'an and saying the masjid. However, when it came to being close to exam times, I'm like, okay, I need to kind of change up a bit. So I'd spend like most of the day just revising as opposed to the Qur'an. So instead of reading the Qur'an, I'd be spending time with my with my revision books and stuff, and maybe a small portion after. So after I'd have my iftar at university sometimes. And I'd have a few people around me, and then we'd pray Maghrib, we'd have iftar, we'd pray Isha, and we'd pray some Qiyam, and we'll do a little bit of Qur'an as well at night, and then again same picture, we just revise until Fajr, and then go home after Fajr, and then the same story basically. So yeah, it's just a bit of a difficult one for students, but I think one thing I can say is just that as much as we do need to focus on exams, we can't at the same time miss out on Ramadan. Because it's such a unique opportunity, and I understand how students can fall into the trap of swapping the mushafs for their revision books, but understand that within the mushaf, lies your success. And if you completely neglect the mushaf, or even just only be reading one page, understand that there will be barakah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place barakah in your time, so long as you make time for Him as well, I guess.
I see that point, but I feel like one of the things that we often get into is there's a lot of emphasis on ritual worship in Ramadan. And again, bringing back the example from Saudi Arabia, is everybody knew. So we used to do this thing around iftar time. We'd go out with packs of, like, we'd make packs of water and dates and kind of little stuff like that for you to break your fast. And we'd go stand at the traffic signals. And if anybody stopped by, and it's like 6-7 minutes to iftar, they're probably heading home from work, or they're heading to an iftar party or something like that. There's no chance they're going to make it back in time, or maybe their shift is something, they're just going to stop and pray and keep driving. So we'd give them like these packets. But what I always noticed was in those last 30 minutes, as you get closer to iftar time, the driving becomes more and more manic. People become absolute maniacs, and I've seen on the street like a fight happen where somebody gave someone like a small fender bender. They ran to the back of their car, pulled out the wrench that you use to change your tire, and started whacking each other with their wrenches. So they got a bit carried away. But my point from that was, I know we put a lot of emphasis on the ritual aspect and even reading Qur'an, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit about how effective that is. But what kind of things do you think you guys working on in terms of identifying personal habits that are bad or something like that?
I think it's important not to throw the idea of ritual worship out the window like that. Well, not like that, but yeah, because Ramadan was the month that Qur'an was revealed. It is the month of the Qur'an, and we have stories from the time of the Sahaba and the Imams where they would leave all these fiqh discussions and they would dedicate the entire month to Qur'an. So like Imam Malik, he wouldn't do anything, he wouldn't engage in these conversations. He would dedicate the entire month to just reading and memorizing and contemplating, doing tadabbur over Qur'an. So I think in terms of ritual worship in Qur'an, I think it's very important that we build, if we haven't already got one, a strong connection to the Qur'an. But I also think for people who are not practicing, it's important that we just don't throw them into the deep end and say start reading Qur'an. We need to put them in an environment that will nurture their Islamic personalities.
There are prophetic traditions. So there's like a hadith which talks about the Prophet ﷺ said, for a person who doesn't leave evil talk and hurting others with his words, etc., that his hunger and thirst has only caused him hunger and thirst. It's not really benefited him.
Well, yeah. So like Amr bin Abdul-Aziz said that people. We used to live in a time where a person's piety wouldn't be judged on how much they prayed and how much they fasted, but on how much they could hold their tongues against other people, because they'd understand that if they couldn't, then their deeds would go bankrupt on their judgment because of their loose tongues. Imam Shirazi said that he woke up with his father one night and for Qiyam, and he asked his dad, he goes, how come we've woken up and these people haven't? So people around him. And his father said, it would have been better for you to stay asleep than speak bad of the people who were still asleep. So I think it's important that we have to maintain good adab and etiquettes while we're fasting as well, and outside of fasting. But it's not just an esoteric thing.
Man's using big lawyer words, esoteric.
Yeah. But
what does that mean?
Inwards. Inside. Spiritual.
What was the word that you said?
Esoteric.
ESOTERIC. Come on, bro.
Right, esoteric.
Read a bit more.
Inadvertently.
Bro, I read the Qur'an.
I'm kidding. All right. I can't respond to... Well, so I'm talking about reading the Qur'an, because you said Ramadan was the month of the Qur'an, and we talked about reading the Qur'an khatams, and we've had Talha Ghannam on, who's shout out to Qur'an Club, great platform for if you wanna do read Qur'an in Ramadan. But one of the things that's pointed out is, especially those people who were reading, and you mentioned Imam Malik as well, like their focus on the Qur'an was very much on contemplating and tadabbur. And I've had the hadith that talks about you get the ajr for every letter that you read of the Qur'an. Alif is a harf, lam is a harf, mim is a harf. I kind of studied a bit with Sheikh Abu Amin Abdullah Phillips. One of the things he pointed out was that hadith was was mentioned to a group of Sahaba. All of them spoke Arabic, so for them reading the Qur'an was actually with understanding. So if you're actually reading the Qur'an without any understanding, perhaps there's little to no value in it, because if you're not doing it with tafsir, if you don't understand what it is, it's as good as reading a medical prescription over and over and over. How much good is that going to do you?
No, I think you're right. One of my teachers actually said to me as well that it's better for you to actually just read one page of Qur'an over and over again if you know what it means, rather than just doing a khatam. So, of course...
I don't agree with that. No,
the thing is, you have to do a khatam in terms of course, there's...
You don't have to do anything.
No. Okay, well, I remember
Well,
that...
you have to fast.
No. Yeah, of course you have to fast. Unless you're traveling or you're ill.
Or you're doing a half fast like Abdus-Sami after he got married.
That's a lie. Anywho, no. What was it? No. Of course, there's the element of doing the khatam as well, and I think our discussions don't kind of neglect it. We're not saying you have to choose one or the other. You know, of course, we're encouraging the ritualistic side of things, but it's also about putting meaning behind these rituals. So you say, you know, it's more effective, or it's more, you know, it's more kind of it touches your iman that bit more for you to actually read one ayah over and over again if it impacts you. Because at the end of the day, that's what the Qur'an, Qur'an was sent to do, to create an impact upon you, to create change upon you. If you're just going to read the Qur'an, you're going to read, those pages just once, and it doesn't really change your life that much. But if you're to read one ayah, and that one ayah kind of snapped at you, and you're like, well, yeah, I need to implement that change in my life, then surely that is what was intended by the Qur'an, and that therefore that is what is better for you. Basically,
I think we can all agree that understanding Quran is much better than not understanding that. It's an agreeable point, but I don't think Abdullah made this point as well on episode 2. I think it was it
episode 1?
Episode 1, sorry,
yeah, first one after the pilot.
Yeah,
I think what it is because you've missed
so
one
many.
episode.
You've done so many episodes that is amazing. Well, I
said
forgot. I guess
you missed one episode. That's why.
All right. Okay. Shout out to Abdul-Sami. He made the point. He said that when there's khair in something, we shouldn't throw doubts on it, bring shubahat, especially to Quran as well, because a lot of people when they're starting to practice, they won't know all these things like we should learn Quran, we should understand Quran, we should do this, we should do that. They will just pick up a Quran and they'll start reading what they learned in mosque when they were kids, and if you start pulling people away from that just to pull them closer to we should learn it with meaning, etc., which is a good thing, but if we pull them further away from reading Quran prima facie, then we're not really doing ourselves any favors, because you have to understand people work in different ways, especially Ramadan, which is a month where people are brought closer to Allah through any means. I know people who have read Quran, don't understand a word of it, and they've switched their lives around because of the impact the Quran has had on their hearts.
So this is something I always found very interesting in when you go for Taraweeh in Pakistan, for example. I've not done that many Ramadans fully in Pakistan. Mostly it's like 15 days. But I always used to find it surprising that we do 20 long rak'ahs, right? Because you have the express superstar imams who'll do the whole thing in 30 minutes, and
Ferrari imams.
Yeah, the Ferrari imams, where you get the alhamdu, you get the alhamdu, and then you get the dalleen, and what happens in the middle is just a bit of a but you get the proper ones who do it slowly. And I used to have people standing like there, like this old Uncle G will pray the whole thing, because I was a bit of a snowflake, right? So I would find the mosque with the AC, drive there, I'd be there with like my water bottle, and I'd bring extra water bottles for other people, and nobody took them. Like it was considered like a weakness to have a water bottle and be.
Yeah, someone tweeted on Twitter once. He goes, "I've just gone to Taraweeh, and this guy had 3 cans of Red Bull, acting like he's going to do 7 sets with Novak Djokovic."
I'm just worried that
I feel like Red Bull is a bit over the top, but water bottle is normal, man. You got to stay hydrated.
I think with Red Bull as well, there's caffeine in there, so surely you're going to use the toilet after as well. So how's it going to
Same
last?
with water, isn't it?
Yeah, but obviously Red Bull has a much. But anyway,
it's caffeine. Caffeine is a
aside
natural,
from that point, it's just people would stand there for 2 straight hours, not understanding a word that's going on, and they'd come out of it, and I was just like, how are these guys still here? Like for me, if I haven't read the translation because I usually I'll stick to one imam and I'll do the translation and tafsir before I go into Taraweeh. Otherwise, I just find myself thinking about work in Taraweeh, and at that point, I'm just like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing?
So not trying to get into the debate of the 21st is 8, but
I mean, even 8, because the people who do 8 oftentimes it's the same length. So
exactly.
I feel like that's an irrelevant point. But
the thing is always slightly shorter, to be honest, because I've experienced both. And thing is, so this one of my favorite masjids that I go to, they pray 8 rak'ah, and I think this is a general advice maybe for mosques as well. First and foremost, important thing is the recitation itself. Making sure that the people that you bring in, the imams that you get in, the recitations is something that's you're able to kind of on an emotional level kind of connect with, so that you increase in the khushu'. Because especially for people who don't really come to the mosques, this is like the first time or once a year that they engage with the Qur'an and interact with the Qur'an. So what better way than making sure that this recitation that's being recited is the most beautiful that you can ever hear. And alhamdulillah, there are a lot of people who are from the UK, for example, young people who have become hafiz and they have amazing recitations. So yeah, if you're a mosque that's listening somehow, and if you know some of these young people, then bring them in, because first and foremost, it's a beautiful recitation that engages you. So there's some mosques, mashallah, they have about 3 imams that they bring in from Ramadan, and all recitations are really, really nice, really amazing, and really engaging. And generally, it flows. Like 8 rak'ah just goes very quickly, even though it's like they read a hizb every single thing, which is 2.5 pages every single rak'ah. And at the end of the tarawih, the sheikh does a small little tafsir about what was recited. So, for example, in this juz, these themes were mentioned. So, for example, the first juz, talking about the Bani Israel, the constant questioning, and what is the lessons that we need to learn from this story, and what is the purpose of anecdotes in the Qur'an, things like these, for example. And it kind of makes you travel with the Qur'an throughout Ramadan, and if you stick to that one, like I think if you stick to one masjid as well during Ramadan, it's like you go on that journey along with them, journeying through the Qur'an with those imams. And even though you're just a musalli, you feel like you got a connection with the imam as well.
But I feel like with that, a lot of people because usually you'll do. So I really like I'm not faulting. I really like that concept of at least you're bringing in the meaning and people are aware of what they're reading. But then I feel like if you spent, usually you'll do 4 rak'ahs, which takes probably 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. Then you'll do a 5-minute summary of the translation. What's the kind of, because especially when you're praying along, when you're praying behind the imam, when you're following along, a lot of people don't understand what's going on, so they just get the summary. So for them, is there, I just find sometimes, isn't it more valuable for them to just sit at the back and read it and follow along in a translation? Why should they even pray behind the imam? Because
of the reward that there is, isn't it? Whoever stands in Ramadan hoping behind the imam, hoping for the reward and expecting the reward, then his sins are forgiven. So I think the element of
but that's my point, is that it seems a bit pointless because you don't understand, you're not engaging with the Quran. Surely it's because it's like the thing about there was a hadith. There was a narration about an imam who stayed at his student's house, and his daughter left the water for him to pray Qiyam al-Layl, and he didn't get up and pray. And so the student's daughter remarked to her father that the sheikh didn't use the Qiyam al-Layl water. So he asked him about it, and he said, actually, I sat there and I contemplated 73 benefits of this hadith instead of praying, which was more beneficial. So is there
I think in a general sense, yeah. I mean, the idea of Qiyam al-Layl isn't specifically just to be praying. It's tahajjud. Qiyam al-Layl itself can be very expansive to just spending time in ibadah, whether it be in dhikr or whether it be in talab al-ilm or however whatnot. But I think this is a specific case to Ramadan itself, because there's the hadith itself which specifies about standing in prayer behind the imam until the imam leaves. That there is a reward in that. So I think I agree. I know what you're trying to say with regards to surely it's more kind of meaningful and more impactful. But I think it's the aspect of you actually going there not necessarily for the Qur'an. You're not going there for the Qur'an. You're going there for the salah, because of the fact that there's a specified reward for it that's mentioned in hadith. If that makes sense.
I mean, I think we're getting into fiqh, because then the whole argument comes of the Prophet only did tarawih in his life twice, and it only became a practice in Umar radiallahu anhu's time, and that whole conversation starts.
I think we need to understand that the purpose behind Ramadan, number one, it's a month for personal ibadat more so than fulfilling obligations. We have to understand that. So the fast, it's a personal ibadat. Even though it's an obligation, it's a personal one on that. It's not a communal obligation, is it? In the sense that we all have to do it, etc. Otherwise, the world's going to end. Same with praying in the masjid. It's a personal obligation. People pick up prayers in the masjid all the time. We should be praying 5 times a day outside Ramadan, but the reason people come inside the mosque inside Ramadan is for their personal betterment of themselves. So when we start bringing up the arguments of whether the person should sit at the back of the masjid and read the translation, or they should actually pray standing behind the imam, it's irrelevant. It depends on the person. We're really making it very minimalist by bringing this discussion up in the first place, because everyone has a different way of approaching Ramadan.
I feel like that's a very I kind of see your point, but then I'm just like, but then Amna Wadud has a point on that where she feels more spiritually connected, praying behind the man. No, was it Amna Wadud who led the Jama'ah of the?
Yeah, but that's outside of that's outside of what's halal haram. Are you telling me that sitting?
I'm just saying when you rip it wide open like everyone does what they want.
No, I'm not saying everyone does.
I've had someone come up to me in Sheffield who said that when he's high on weed, his focus in salah is higher.
Yeah, I know someone who says that as well. So what I'm trying to say is,
as long as it's within the boundaries of halal haram, it's fine. Sorry, within the boundaries of halal.
I'm saying you were both talking about either sitting at the back of the masjid or praying behind the imam. Which one of them is equivalent to praying behind a female imam or smoking weed before you pray? It's just.
I was just making that clarification.
You're just this is devil's advocate. That's what he is.
No, I apologize.
Remember that TV program, Muslims Like Us? It was like a Muslim version of.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yes, that was.
So there was the woman who said, "I write letters to God."
Yeah, that was ridiculous. That was.
But my main issue with that was the whole. I guess because it was Muslims like us. It was like. Well, normally Muslims aren't.
You would assume that there'd be a representative of every Muslim personality.
What I liked there was they had various ethnic groups, so they actually showed because I feel like too often Islam, especially in this country, is just I think we talked about this with Islamophobia as well. Is that actually the people who are Islamophobic is just the fact that they just don't like brown people, and I think it needs to be very clear that Islam is not an ethnicity or a culture. It's wider than that.
I think the problem with that program was that it was good that they had different ethnic groups. Okay, so
no, but I just feel like that thing is. I had a fundamental problem with the program about because you said the thing about ethnic. I think they did represent various groups, but even then, the fact that it was called Muslims Like Us is like what? So normally, every Muslim is like
ideologically, they did not represent every single group of.
Islamic but even if they did, it would be a problematic program. That wasn't.
It wouldn't because we wouldn't know how it turned out.
No, I think Thaqib's issue is more like
my issue is with the premise of calling something Muslims Like Us and.
Well, you'd assume that a program called Muslims Like Us would bring Muslims into a house that we could relate to. We couldn't relate to any of these.
Well, the thing is, the program itself was very entertaining, I guess, for Muslims, but for non-Muslims, it should have been. It's just like, so this is what Muslims do. Yeah, they just bicker amongst themselves, argue amongst themselves, and then kill themselves.
I personally didn't really find it very entertaining either, but maybe I was
because the idea of a conservative Muslim was a person who wouldn't shake the hands of females, who would hand out leaflets in the house about dressing modestly. That was the idea of a conservative Muslim because he was portrayed as the conservative Muslim in the house. Everybody else was portrayed as the modern Muslim. There
was the guy who. So I feel like the guy who wanted to go to the mosque, Bradford, was he the one? There was one guy who was handing out leaflets and he was very very kind of aggressive almost.
Yeah.
But then there was the other guy who was the guy from Bradford who had like a big beard and he tried to go to the mosque every time. And then eventually at the end of the show, he sacrificed to go to like a garden with them in York. So he didn't go to the mosque. And that was how he compromised with them because he just brought a prayer mat along. So again, there were big issues with that. I think it was wider than just the misrepresentation. I feel like if you actually brought a actual representative sample of all Muslims, I would still find that
I felt like it felt like a science experiment basically.
Yeah. Let's bring those Muslim monkeys in and see what how they behave
under these kind of conditions and under these testing conditions, and we'll keep these variables.
Because it just homogenizes Muslims, right? It's like all Muslims in Britain are like this, and we've put all of them in here, and let's see what they do, which is not what we do. Whereas in practice, right, it's just like we do. I think I was getting interviewed at LBC, and the guy asked him about. He said, "Your community have done things like this," and in retrospect, one of the better answers for him would have been, "What do you mean by your community? Because are you saying I'm not part of the same community you're part of?" And I get his point about British Muslims being a community, but actually, it's very loose.
I think the idea of the program, we have to take it too far now. That it was purely entertaining.
I think we need to get back to the topic. We need to get back to the topic, which was
you brought it up, mate.
No. Assad brought it up. He was talking about individual worship.
All right. Yeah, but my point stands at individual worship. I still stand by the point because I've seen people change in Ramadan. not because of doing X, Y, Z because someone tells them to do it. It's because of them following what they think is right. I'm not saying that somebody should do what I'm not leading the prayer as a female, men standing behind her, or someone smoking a joint.
Maybe that changed her.
Or someone smoking a joint before Tarawih. But I'm talking about.
I'm just saying the point of that argument that I've seen it work for some people. Therefore, because like I've seen loads of.
No,
people
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that this discussion cannot be had on a level that we say something is right and something is wrong, because we can't do that, because
we can't do that anyway.
Well, we can do that. We shouldn't do that because
we're just three lads.
Because you have to understand that people don't work like that. It's simply people do not work like that. We can't just say this is right and people should do this, and if they do this, it will benefit them this way.
As in, it's more of an individual kind of thing. So if you personally find that this does impact you more, then go for this option.
My point is more, this is God's word, and reading and understanding it is incredibly important. And
of course it is. It was brought down for the purpose of.
No, because I know a lot of people, what they do is they'll do like 8 khatams during the month of Ramadan, right? Which I know some people use the example of like the Sahaba used to finish one Qur'an every 3 days. And so, well, that means that they spent like 14 hours a day, which means it took them, was it, how do you count this? 14 plus 14 plus 42 hours or something. And that was like, they were fully on it. And even that, the Prophet told them not to do, because it's better to go slower and absorb the message, which the senior Sahaba, like Abu Bakr, etc., they took like, I think there's a report that he took like 7 years just to memorize Surah Baqarah, because... Yeah,
I think we're all in agreement of that. And I think what is the discussion I was saying was that people don't necessarily come to Tarawih with the intention of connecting to the Qur'an. They just come, of course they do, but it's more from the Salah point of view, because they go there for the Salah. And some people do go there because they want to connect with the Qur'an. And I think this is where Assad's trying to come in by saying that, look, if an individual finds that what's better for him is that he just sits at the back with the Mus'haf open and follows the Imam, that's better for him. If a person finds that what's better for him is to actually join the Salah because he feels that it's through the throw
shubhat on something that's perfectly valid in the deen for somebody to engage with Allah. We shouldn't throw doubts on that, because at the end of the day, it's not our position to throw doubts on that. We can advise people saying that maybe if you read Qur'an and you learn a certain surah, so when you're praying behind the Imam and that surah comes up, you can understand it more, connect more with it, that will be beneficial for you. We can advise people by telling people this is right and this is wrong and you should do it this way and you shouldn't do it that way. That's where the problem comes with the Muslim community, especially in Ramadan. We have this habit of calling people Ramadan Muslims, for example.
Yeah, it's a very bad habit.
It's a big habit of the Muslim community in Britain, because it's a fact that the mosques are not as full outside Ramadan as they are inside Ramadan. But we have to understand that the principle of Ramadan is that Allah is opening Himself.
I think actually the term of Ramadan Muslim is as true as it can be. I think when some people actually say it, they might be saying it from a point of pride and arrogance. From the point of view that, very similar to the story that you mentioned about, when the man woke up and two of his friends were asleep, and he went to his father and said that, how come these people are sleeping? I think that calling people Ramadan Muslims is that very similar kind of a scenario where you're saying, oh, I pray all the time, and these people are only praying on Ramadan. So I think it's an aspect that, unfortunately it is true where some people are more practicing in Ramadan and they become less practicing after. But I think what we need to do is be a bit more optimistic about this, where if we see a close friend, for example, who's somehow found a better connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of Ramadan, why don't we keep that friend engaged and motivate them and push them and encourage them and be that positive energy for them, where they can actually come back to the deen. As I mentioned as well, about what is the purpose of Ramadan at the end of the day, and it comes to when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He's prescribed fasting so that you can become a person of taqwa, and this is a personal barometer of taqwa. For you, you can have a certain level of taqwa, and a person has a certain level of taqwa, and based upon that, a person has an individual journey to try and achieve the best levels of taqwa.
An interesting thing to know with the with calling people Ramadan Muslims, etc., and talking bad of people is that every single narration of the Prophet ﷺ or outside the Prophet ﷺ, in terms of the scholars, when talking about speaking ill of people, the Prophet ﷺ is not talking to. He's not talking about the effect it has on the person. He's talking about the effect it has on the person who's backbiting. He's talking about how saying something to a person will not necessarily be bad for the person who's being said against, but for the person who's saying it. You know, your deeds will go bankrupt on the day of judgment if you have a loose tongue. It's not necessarily saying, if I say this about this person, then this person's going to be, she's never going to come to the mosque again. Even though it might be true in some circumstances, it shows again that the importance of the person ibadat and keeping yourself to yourself, you know what I mean?
One thing actually I also want to talk about before we start wrapping up actually, on top of fasting and on top of the qiyam, on top of Qur'an, is the aspect or the importance you want to give to also sadaqah. I know we're all students and that's, we were students in it.
There you go. Freudian slip there. Student on its visa.
We're all tulab al-ilm, so yeah. But from whatever capacity we can, I guess, sadaqah is very important as well. Not only is it, the typical cliche hadith where it helps extinguish sins, but it's also a means to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's also something which Rasulullah would increase in Ramadan specifically. That he'd give more in Ramadan than he'd give at any other time of the year, and more importantly, small but consistent is better than just dumping $5,000 in one day. So every day in Ramadan, just how you have the intention of reading 5 pages of Qur'an a day, have the intention of giving £3 a day as well to your local mosque or to a certain cause or something like that, or maybe to a Middle West podcast if we have a donation page. Do we have one?
We don't have a donation page, no.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah. Currently we are self-sufficient by the organizations, but inshallah, maybe one day we will reach out to people and give them an opportunity.
Give us your money so that we can
take their shekels.
A studio.
We haven't even started. You're just plugging yourself and...
Basically what it is that I think we should be pushing for an eco-friendly environment, and therefore I think that we should be pushing for fundraisers so that us three can have electric cars.
I agree with that.
Well, you already do have a German hybrid saloon that... I'm perfectly happy with my small little 1.2.
I'm perfectly happy with my small little 0.9.
Alhamdulillah. So,
yeah, but
not 0.9.
We said we weren't going to talk about cars, right? Moving back to Ramadan and sadaqah. I think that was a really good point. I think I remember last year reading something about someone basically said that, again, this should be one of your things is rather than in the month of Ramadan, I'm going to donate, £5,000 in one hit, try and set up something regular and not something that you set it and forget it, although there's a benefit of that. But instead of like a direct debit where it just goes out of your account, you don't think about it, you actively remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you find avenues to donate to, even if it's something small like £5 a night or something, or £2 a night, whatever you could afford, but you actively go out there and do that. And one of the things is, subhanAllah, we live in an age where actually doing that is very, very easy. And there's a good thing and a bad thing to that. The good thing is that you can be sitting there, just pull your phone out and donate £10 and it'll go to some needy person in Yemen, and someone else will do the work for you. Obviously, the problem with that is that people don't actually actively go out there and find people in their community or efforts in their community. Because I'm sure your local masjid probably needs money for building and stuff, but also there's probably people in your community who come to your masjid every single day who are struggling to make ends meet, or they have alhamdulillah, the NHS takes care of most of our medical bills. May Allah protect the NHS and Sheikh
Ameen. Sheikh Corbin.
Now the NHS is a legit, may Allah protect the NHS legit. But it's something that is a big blessing for us, and I think we lose sight of that. But medical, whatever bills, like family bills or care bills or something like that, and they're just a local in your community, and you haven't made the effort to go out there and find that. So that's something very good, and I think that's something perhaps can be
You know what, actually, I think sometimes that kind of thing might be even better. If you know someone, a neighbor of yours that's struggling financially, even that's considered to be charity. And charity starts from home. So if, for example, if there are any parents that are listening, and if you have a your child that is a student,
again. Dude, what's going on here? Why does he keep asking for money? Do you know what? I think we should cover lunch for you or something today, inshallah. But with that, we're going to wrap up. We'll see you again in 2 weeks with another episode of the Middle West podcast. If you have any suggestions for guests, ideas, complaints, you don't like how loud Assad breathes, or something like that, please write to us at middlewestpc@gmail.com. That's our email, middlewestpc@gmail.com. You can also reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, at the Middle West PC. And you can listen to us on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. Please give us 5 out of 5 ratings wherever you listen to us. Unless you think we're terrible, in which case, email us and then we'll become great. And then you'll give us a 5 out of 5 star rating.
See this autocracy that Thaqib's got. There's no way he's leaving, no matter how bad he is.
Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.